Nonetheless, I'm going to pray. So, Lord, I thank you so much that you bring us through so many different seasons in our life. I thank you that you just have such a beautiful tapestry in store for us. And I think that we don't really get to see the fullness of that until we actually live it out, until we walk through it. So I thank you that you are a God who surprises us and treats us and gives gifts to us and loves us in a way that is constantly surprising. So Lord, we just thank you so much, and we welcome your Spirit here tonight. Lord, just minister to our hearts, open our hearts up to you, and declare this in your name. Amen. So, as I warned before, this week we are talking about change. And change happens. Like, it really does. And there's an old bumper sticker that says something else happens. It rhymes with hit or Schmidt. Nonetheless, the bumper sticker is right. Things just happen sometimes. Sometimes change just happens. Sometimes change comes eventually. But ultimately, tonight we're going to really talk about what that dynamic is in us that really hates change. Like, there's something in us that really is not okay with it. So let's see. Why is change so tough? What do you think? Why is change tough?
We like consistency. We like having a pattern of things that we used to, so that's
So we like that rhythm of life, and all of a sudden change throws that rhythm off. So instead of being consistent, it's kind of like you start a song about and then everything gets messy. Joe, predictability. You can navigate if this, then probably that tomorrow. Right? It takes us out of our comfort zone. Because we end up building these lovely defenses, being like, I know these are my parameters, don't come down. These are my stop. These are my parameters, and I'm okay here.
Change isn't necessarily always better, or it might seem better to us.
Change could suck. Yes, it could. Change could go horribly wrong. It's good now. Change could go bad. What else I got? These are all great answers, by the way. It wasn't like I had an answer coming up. These are great answers. That. The fear of the unknown. Which is why I initially chose space for the cover of the first book. So it's like, space is always changing. On a side tangent, just ever so slightly. You have never stayed still. Ever. You have been spending your whole entire life going hundreds of thousands of miles per second. Always. You have never stopped. Space is constantly moving. You cannot get a fixed point, only getting the relative location of two things in how it's moving in amongst the galaxy. That's a weird thought. You have never been still. I mean, obviously, I've never sat still, but that is not the point. Neither of you. So you don't know what stillness is. Isn't that weird for me when I was thinking about this? Vision. There's an unknownness. It's a change. Whenever something changes, whenever something is going to happen, it is that I don't know what's going to happen next anymore. You can't peg it. For those of you who are leavers, you've been going to school forever. Quite literally. As much as you can probably remember, you have been going to school. Sure. Well, even if it's homeschool, you've had school in your life. And while some of you might be going to university, and that's still kind of school, ultimately, this is a big change for you guys. And I have to say, as well, the summer tends to be a big change for a lot of people, because some people are changing schools in a different year. Everything starts to shift. Some people are moving into a sixth form where they no longer have to wear their uniforms. That's pretty cool. Change though. Suddenly you wake up and have to go, wait, I have to choose what to wear today? That's not cool. That's not okay. It's just the same thing every day. This is a youth pastor's uniform. This. Every now and then I've thought about, being the youth pastor that wears a suit just so I can have regularity. It'd just be like, I'm going to wear a suit every day. Just like a full, fitted, snazzy suit. Be like, yes, I'm the youth pastor that wears a suit. But then I thought, I don't have to wear a suit every day. So, change is bound to happen. One of the things that's going on in our church right now is our worship pastor, the amazing Callie Berry, is stepping down because there's a vision for her to have a brave new future, as well as a new person to come in to see the ministry do something slightly in a different direction. So we have youth group, we have kids group, we have church for old people. But as far as students go, we haven't ever had someone to actually spend dedicated time looking after students and people in their 20s. So suddenly we were like, maybe we should. And the eldership was feeling called to that. But that brings and provokes change. Change for Allie, change for us. Claire's heading off on a brave new adventure. Well, a brave old adventure, but nonetheless, kind of brave. But that's new for her. That is a change. That is not the way that I would even venture that she guessed this year to play out. Or I guessed. Or you guessed. Change happens. And ultimately, we don't have a say in it. You don't get to go, I object. Not going to let it change. That's not how that works. So tonight, we're going to talk about some of the aspects of change and really what we can appreciate from it and what we actually just have to accept. I love this. I don't know if you can read it from there. So I have this. So I'm going to read it. So we'll start. It goes like that. Ready? Are you making any resolutions for the new year? Nope. I want everything to stay the same as it was last year. Everything? Everything? Right. This year was lousy, but at least it's familiar. I hate change. It's too disruptive. When things are different, you have to think about the change and deal with it. I like things to stay the same, so I can take everything for granted. Besides, things keep changing for the worse. The longer I live, the more complicated everything gets. I say, let's stop here before it gets any harder. From now on, no more change. I'm bored, let's do something different. Yes, some things don't change. I thought it was really amusing because Calvin takes my stance on change. It makes everything more complicated. And I hate change until I'm bored. And then change is alright. I love this verse because it's really simple and straightforward. In Malachi, it says, I, the Lord, do not change. It's kind of nice. Like, he didn't really mince words there. He's just like, I don't change. So the God that is in Genesis is the same God that's talked about in the book of Revelation. We might know him a little bit better by that, but he hasn't changed. See, for us, and I hate to break it to you, change is a constant. I was serious about you've never been still. You have always been moving and changing. From the moment you were born, you were constantly in a state of change. You will never be the same. Did you know that the average human changes every cell in their body between 3 and 6 months? You, at best, they trace some bone cells to be maybe 3 years old. So no matter how old you are, whether you're 90 or whether you're 12, you are about 3 years old, at best. You are constantly changing, which is amazing and also slightly concerning. Just putting it out there. I'm the oldest 3-year-old I know. In many ways. But sometimes that's a lot of information to take in. And actually nothing you know is ever the same. There's a couple musical ideas that went through my head of songs to play. One being David Bowie's Changes, like I sang for last year. That's the youth rather. And the second one was this. There is a Beatles song. I think it's called Places I Remember or something like that. Places I remember all my life, some have changed. It continues on to go, some forever, not for better. Some are gone and some remain. Isn't that the truth? Think about some of your favorite childhood places. Are they still there? Maybe the favorite store you used to go to as a kid? It could very well be gone. The coffee shop I visit in Putney is now gone. Saw it today, they're taking down the signs. It's only been up for like 6 months. Everything changes. Except for one thing. Everything changes except for one thing. The change that we expect in life, for some reason, still causes us great distress. Like, change comes constantly, right? Like, seriously, have you ever not aged? Would you be a little freaked out if you stopped? Like, if suddenly you were like, I'm 7 for the last 6 years. Like, oh, that's weird. That would not be okay, but people are like, oh, I don't like change. Well, apparently some change in your life. It's a good thing. We are comforted by the fact that God says in the midst of everything, when you can count on everything changing, shifting everything, I don't change. The God you love will always be the same God. He is so infinite and so past our understanding that he can manage to show us new sides of himself every day and never change. You don't have to worry if God says he loves you on one day, if he's going to change his mind because of something you did. He doesn't change. So when we get used to life scenarios and things changing, and suddenly causing this like inner strife that basically screams out like, help me! God doesn't change. He brings peace to that. So I want to share something with you. There's a little book, and it's really cool. It's from the business world. It was really helpful for me. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? Sounds fun, doesn't it? Who Moved My Cheese? So basically, let me tell you a little bit of my testimony, and then I'm going to share some stuff. Before I came here, about a year before I moved here, we found out we were having another kid. Yay, his name's Kale, you all know him. But nonetheless, we didn't at the time. That's kind of how that works. So suddenly, God reminds me and Kim of a promise we made before him. See, Kim felt she was called to be a stay-at-home mom. But she was working full-time because I am a youth pastor at the time, and for a small church. And ultimately, I'm taking kind of a pay cut because it is a small church, and I'm doing it as a kind of a love ministry as well as a job. So she is the major breadwinner in our home. But she is feeling that God is telling her, actually, she needs to be the mom to our already son, as well as our future children. That was hard because that required a lot of weird faith. But suddenly we're like, all right, God, I guess we'll do it. We lay it down before you, and Kim, we'll pray we got a year to get our stuff in order, and Kim will quit her job come November 2011. We find out that we are expecting Kale, and that his due date is September, and normally in the States you get about 2 months off for maternity leave, which would bring Kim to leave her job exactly in November. We thought, since the life of our child was given due to this promise, that would be a bad idea to cross back in rebellion. We just figured that would be a bad plan to start our son's life in rebellion. So we knew we actually had to honor what we promised him. This meant immediate change. This meant Kim was going to leave her job. This meant I had to go before the elders and ask, hey, can you increase my pay by like 2/3? By the way, no one likes being told that. And the reality for me, though, is they said no. They were honest. They were like, look, at this time, we don't have the money to do that. But also, we are looking to combine the youth position with a worship position and have an associate pastor. So ultimately, I was being made redundant anyways. Suddenly, change was at my doorstep. I have a child on the way, a child already, a wife who's quitting her job, and I no longer have a job. This is fun. This is change. In the midst of all this, I had a friend come up to me with this book about cheese. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, trust me, it's really good. He's like, at the moment, what do you think of everything that you currently have? I'm like, what's the best? I have the best home, in the best town, with the best family, in the best job, with the best teens. Everything I have is the best. So if I change anything, it's got to be worse. And he goes, is that what God says? And I'm like, well, how could God make it any better? You ever felt that way about change? How could it really get any better? This is pretty awesome. Isn't it going to get worse? How will it ever be as good as it was? Surely God can't do that. Maybe God, at best, God can keep it the same, but better? No, that's not going to happen. My story continues to fold up to now that I'm here, that I have the absolute most amazing youth group, the most amazing leadership team, in the most amazing church, in the most amazing city in the world. I couldn't have fathomed it. If I could time travel, which would be really scary because I was like really bigger then. So all of a sudden like a thin me shows up and be like, "Wah!" and told me that all this is going to happen, I would have called the thin me a liar. Wouldn't you though? So for the leavers who don't get to come to youth next year, if I told you the 20s group will be even better, wouldn't you call me a liar? Wouldn't you say, I can't believe that?
I felt very good.
Or about the people who are going to new schools, starting a new job maybe, moving to a different place. Knowing that it's going to be better sounds ridiculous. I don't know, what about all the people who have told Alec that we believe that God has something better in store for her? That as fun as this was, she is called for so much more. And I know tons of people that would have a tough time with that. We don't accept that change could be okay. We have a lot of stuff tied into what's normally going on. So let me quickly, we're going to watch a 3-minute clip, but I'm going to explain it a little bit. So this book tells a story of 4 characters. These 2 characters, 2 are mice, and their names are Sniff and Scurry. These mice are pure instinct, because they're mice. They're mice. And then there's 2 other characters. They're 2 little people. They're named Hem and Haw. Now these are like people. They have complex emotions, beliefs, and fears. The same way we do when we bring all of that into any scenario we have. And in reality, they've been living in this maze happily, and they have found cheese and are happy in Cheese Zone C. So every day, they wake up, and they run out of their homes, and they know exactly where Cheese Zone C is. They know where they can find their cheese. But recently, Sniff and Scurry, who are pure instinct and just kind of keeping their eyes on things, start noticing that the cheese is dwindling. But Hem and Haw, who have their hearts wrapped into the cheese, haven't started noticing. We're going to show a video. It is low res and from the 90s. Be warned.
One morning, they arrived at Cheese Station C and discovered there was no cheese.
They weren't surprised, since they'd noticed the supply of cheese had been getting smaller.
The mice did not overanalyze things. The situation had changed, so Sniff and Scurry changed.
They were soon off in search of new cheese.
Later that day, Hem and Haw arrived at Cheese Station C.
They had not been paying attention to the changes that had been taking place.
What? No cheese? No cheese? Who moved my cheese? It's not fair!
Hem, I know we're smarter than mice, but we're not acting like it at the moment. What'll happen if the cheese isn't here tomorrow? I've made plans based on this cheese.
While Sniff and Scurry had moved on, Hem and Haw continued to hem and haw.
One night, Haw wrote on the wall,
The more important cheese is to you, the more you want to hold on to it.
The next day, Hem and Haw still somehow expected to find their cheese in the same place.
Why did they do this to me?
Now, where are Sniff and Scurry? Do you think they know something we don't?
Nah, they're just simple mice. We're little people. We're entitled to our cheese.
Yeah, but maybe we should just simply get going and find some new cheese.
Oh, no. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. I want things to be the way they were.
Meanwhile, Sniff and Scurry moved further into the maze. They didn't think of anything else but finding new cheese.
After much trial and error, Sniff and Scurry found the biggest store of cheese they had ever seen at Cheese Station N.
Meanwhile, Hem and Haw were still hemming and hawing at empty Cheese Station C.
Then Haw began to imagine himself out in the maze, finding fresh new cheese.
Before long, he could almost taste it.
Come on, Hem. Let's go.
No, I like it here. It's comfortable. Besides, it's real dangerous out there.
Haw imagined the worst. His hope of finding new cheese faded.
So every day, Hem and Haw went from their homes to cheeseless Station C.
And returned home again with empty bellies, full of nothing but stress.
Who moved my cheese? Who moved my cheese? Who moved my
Ham,
cheese?
Ham, look at us. We keep doing the same things over and over and wonder why things don't get better. It's time to move on.
Well, you're not really going out into the maze again. Why don't we wait here until they put the cheese back?
You just don't get it. They're never going to put the old cheese back. That was yesterday's cheese. It's time to find new cheese.
Oh, but what if there's no cheese out there? Or what if you can't find it?
Ham, life moves on, and so should we.
No! Who moved my cheese? Who moved my cheese? Who moved my
If
cheese?
we
Who
don't
moved my
change,
cheese?
we could become extinct.
Like Hem, a part of Haw was afraid. Then Haw wrote on the wall what he had been thinking about.
What would you do if you weren't afraid?
It wasn't long before Haw knew what to do. Haw gathered all his courage and jogged into the unknown.
It's maze time!
It's maze time! Okay, so some of the dialogue was a bit stale. Let's be fair. What would you do if you weren't afraid? So I have to say, this question plows through change constantly. What would you do if you weren't afraid? Could you really enjoy 20th group or the next big thing that's on store for you? University. If you weren't afraid of it not being like it was. If you didn't carry that fear into what you were doing, wouldn't it change everything? Wouldn't it be different? Yeah, of course it's going to be different. But it could be better if you let it be better. So, how you react to change shows your character. I was once told, when I was probably your age, that you can't judge a person's character by the way they act. Because a person can act any way they please. A person can act calm. A person can act clever. A person can act confident. But you tell a person's character by the way they react. By the way, given a new circumstance, how they immediately can either move into that or not. In psychology, it's called social cognition. And it means your ability to look at your surroundings and adapt and understand what's going on immediately. When children have poor social cognition, they tend to be on one of two sides. They tend to be shy and reserved, or aggressive and bullies. And the reason being is this: playing out a scenario of change. You were planning to sit down at your lunch table with your lunch in your hand and your glass of milk. You recently got it from the lunch lady, or whatever you call that person here, and you are walking to your table. All things are planned for you to sit down safely. But someone slams into you, and now you are covered in food and your milk's all over the floor. How you deal with change, this simple change between what you were planning and what actually happened, dictates everything about who you are. If you turn around and yell, "Hey, you idiot!" and punch him in the face, that's something very interesting about you. Don't you think? If you immediately go into this, "Oh, I'm sorry, what's my fault? Oh, please, I'm sorry. Oh, look, it's all over. You know, I'm sorry." Alright, so that hurt. How you respond to change in your life, change in your environment, change in your plans, tells a lot about you. I used to talk to Kim when we were married, and recently just got into ministry as soon as we were married. We both had to learn this phrase, and the phrase was to roll with the punches. Because no matter what you plan for a Sunday, if you're in ministry, it looks different. like so infrequently that the things I plan happen, that it is no longer worth getting frustrated about. I would constantly be upset, constantly be angry, constantly be at my tipping point. And you know what? For those first couple of years, I was always angry. Seriously, if you ever get an opportunity, ask any of the youth that graduated from the first 2 years that I had. They will be like, lots of shouting. Like, I used to send people out of the room because I was cross with them. I couldn't deal with it. Too much stuff was changing. In me, I was so unsecure. I couldn't answer that question with, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? Because I was constantly afraid of losing control of the group or not having to go the way I planned. But what happens if they don't have an awesome youth experience? They grow up hating youth ministry, hating Jesus because I failed this. It's like, wow, that's a lot of fear to hold on to, don't you think? It's not about me. God's bigger than that. When you start realizing that God is bigger than whatever scenario you're going into, actually it's a little bit easier to let go of that fear. Every good and perfect gift comes from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly light, who does not change like shifting shadows. Life changes. God doesn't. I like the emphasis of the shifting shadows here, because that is pretty much how everything else changes. Have you ever watched a time-lapse video of the sun rising? And you watch as the shadows all move around, like recoil into the trees. It is a really cool thing. I highly recommend it. If I had any forethought, I would be playing that now. But I'm not. So, I recommend watching it, but God doesn't change like that. Can you imagine looking at a landscape time-lapse, and when every other shadow retreats into the tree that it makes, because the sun's got to noon, there's one tree standing with its shadow straight still. It would be a very weird picture. You can't like put it in my head. It's surrealism. When it comes to your future, when it comes to the gifts and things God is pouring out for each and every one of you, because He loves you, He will never, ever, ever, ever change. He doesn't go, oh, you're off to university. Well, I guess I'm going to make it tough for you now. Because, I love you a little bit less because you're not in youth. Or He doesn't go, that thing you love to do, well, yes, that's ending. You were far better at that than anything else, so I'm not going to give you any nice things to do now. Think about it this way. The same God that gave you all the good things you love and want to hold on dearly to right now wants to give you more. We have a Christmas tradition in our family. We get new pajamas every Christmas Eve. It tends to be a really good thing because my boys grow a lot in the span of a year. So by the time Christmas rolls around, if they're still wearing last year's Christmas pajamas, they don't fit. Are you seeing my analogy? How many things are you still wearing that were a gift from God and were awesome, but you have outgrown? And you still wear it because it's comfortable. What if the new one doesn't fit? What if I don't like the color? But it's still the same good God that gave you the first one. He knows you better than anyone knows you. He knows what you can withstand and what you can endure, and on top of that, what you can enjoy. He's not afraid to put change into your life because He knows you better than you know you. And it's that fear we carry like hem and haw, going, this is unfair, because change stinks. I don't want it to change. Who moved this? This is not okay. I want it to come back, and I'm going to stay here till it does. That is an incredibly loud fear reaction. And we all do it. I've done it. I still do it. I had to get a new bike recently. I looked so hard online for the same exact model. Seriously. It was an old model. I spent days probably working, scouting eBay, scouting Gumtree, scouting different opportunities to get that same bike back. Because I liked it. I don't know if I like a new bike. I like my old bike. It was my bike. I rode that bike for more than 500 miles. I liked that bike. I like my new bike better. It's been a week, and already I know it's better. I like my bike so much, there have been times where I've been sitting on it and being like, oh, I have to get off now? Oh, that's sad. So I'll see you later. We often equate new has to be worse, because we don't know any better. What a silly, silly thing. In reality, our God is infinite. Can you imagine if you only got to know God as much as you knew Him when you were 5? The series we're doing on Sunday mornings called Sunday School Exposed. Can you think of how limited your scope of God would be if you were locked into preschool stories of Him your whole life? You want to change. You want to adapt. That would be horrible. But you can't fathom Him beyond that. The future God has for you is infinite. Anything can happen. But He promises He doesn't change, and He promises that all good and perfect gifts come from Him. And since He doesn't change, He's already given you good and perfect gifts, as you'll probably agree to that right now things are okay, but if they change, things will be bad. You agree that right now you have good and perfect gifts from Him, but if He gives you another gift, maybe it won't be good and perfect? You see where that logic quickly kind of breaks down? Kind of breaks down. Just to top it all off, in case we were thinking we're locked into God the Father on this one. Hebrews says Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Jesus knows about change. Oddly enough, He came to the earth as a baby and at least grew up to be 33. That's change. He understands change. On the opposite side of that, He also understands what being eternal and infinite means. He so desperately wants you to let go of your fear. Jeremiah says, I know the plans I have. Plans for you to prosper and not to harm. Yes, there are new seasons and things change. That is 100% true. But God doesn't change. And His plans for you to prosper and not be harmed stay constant. There's a verse in the Bible. There's a book called Ecclesiastes. And Ecclesiastes is an interesting book. Solomon basically writes it towards the latter parts of his life when he's afraid of everything. He looks over the scope of his life and he says, everything I've done is vanity. Everything was useless. Because he couldn't grasp the scope of that after death, God still kept him. He was one of the wisest people in the Old Covenant, but he still couldn't foresee Jesus. He does say this brilliant thing. It's been changed to a song every now and then. Try not to sing it, try just to read it. It's Ecclesiastes 3. It says, for everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under the sun. There's a time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up what has been planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away your stones, and a time to gather your stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. It's a time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silent, and a time to speak. It's a time to love, and a time to hate. And a time for war, and a time for peace. If in the infinite scope of God's wisdom there's time for all of these things, there's some dramatic change going on, don't you think? But everything has its season. A time to love your neighbor and hate their sin, or hate your sin, or hate the enemy. A time to kill that lamb because it's for dinner. Seriously, there's a time for everything. Can you imagine the complication it would be if you were a child growing up on a farm? Anyone grow up on a farm here? Raise animals that were going to be dinner? It's got to be a tough thing. Raise vegetables that were going to be dinner? Equally tough. Hey, I'm not kidding. I grew a plant when I was little, and I was devastated when we ate it. But there's a time for everything. Are you holding on to the time that's passing? I mean, that's like an infinite question. Are you holding on to this time because it can never get better? So you're holding on, so you refuse to let God give you anything new. Even though He loves you. Even though He's looking at you like a kid who's outgrown their Christmas pajamas. He's like, look, love, it's time for new ones. It's okay, I picked out your favorite. No, my pajamas. No, stop it. Or do we go, oh wow, look at this. Look, they're like high waters. They come to like here. I could use new pajamas. I'm up for some new pajamas. I don't know what they look like. I don't know what they're going to be like. I don't know if they're my favorite. But I know this. The God that knows me better than anyone else and loves me more than anyone else is the one giving it to me. So I'm going to have hope. I'm going to boldly walk into what's next and not timidly. I'm not going to turn around and try to punch the person when my milk spills, and I'm not going to implode on myself. I'm going to look around and go, oh, things are changing. Maybe I should change too. That is an incredibly hard place to be. But what I've learned is if you can find comfort in the fact that things change, you will always be comfortable. You know? If you can go, this is awesome now, and it's fleeting. Scripture says that what is man's life? It's like a vapor. It's like a plume of smoke. Here one moment, and you gone. Everything is fleeting. We have an eternal home where change will probably still exist. We'll probably have more time to cope with it. Just because if time's out of place, you'll have a good 300 years to, have to change your socks. Nonetheless, in heaven, maybe your feet don't smell like them.
They smell good.
What is that heavenly aroma? It's just my feet. See, that's a big change.
Maybe we'll be wearing sandals.
When it comes to change, are you willing to lay down your fear? Are you willing to look and adapt to when God goes, things are changing, it's okay? Or are you going to end up being like, I can't remember which one stayed and which one left, but the guy that's like, no, I'm going to stay here till my cheese comes back to me. No, I'm going to stay here till things don't have to change anymore. I'm going to stay here till I get my way. I don't care if there's something better potentially out there. I love that, what was it, Cheese Station N? Had like the most cheese ever, but you'd never know by just sitting in Zone C. If you refuse to change when God's asking you to change, if you refuse to go, actually God, I'm up for an adventure, then you will be stuck in not only rebellion, which is a bad enough place to be, but with nothing changing. There's a quote that has been attributed to Albert Einstein, and I don't particularly know if it is. And it's, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly, hoping for a different outcome. How crazy is it to do the same exact thing day in and day out, and going, God, why is nothing changing for the good? But don't change anything. Just like doing the same exact thing. Holy Spirit, come. Revival, yes, yes, yes. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. But revival! How's that working? You gotta do something different. Things have to change. And it's okay. Look, the Pharisees hated change. They were used to their way, and they were good at it. They were wealthy because of it. And all of a sudden, Jesus comes in, and he's like, I I'm the new covenant. And they're like, oh, new? No. We just got wealthy off the old one. No new here. They couldn't see Jesus in front of them because they were so used to having it their way. I don't know about you, but I constantly check because I want to always see Jesus. I don't want to miss what Jesus is doing because I'm stuck in my way. I don't want to miss what the Holy Spirit is igniting in people because I want it my way. Change is scary, and change is risky. Wayne Gretzky has a brilliant quote. Anyone know who Wayne Gretzky is? Wayne Gretzky is an ice hockey player. He has a quote that simply states this: you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. It is a rather profound statement. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. If you want a guaranteed way to fail at what the Lord has for you next, don't do it. If you try it, you have a chance of succeeding. And on top of that, God's with you, so pretty good odds. But if you don't try it, that's a guaranteed failure. But at least you didn't change. Right? I'm feeling that some of you guys might need to lay down some fear and trepidation about the future. Maybe it's you don't want things to change because you like your friends and you might see them less. Maybe you don't want things to change because you don't think they should. And what if it's never as good? Maybe you don't want things to change because you are really used to the way things already are. And changing might really mess things up. Whatever it is, I have a funny feeling, and I'm willing to be pretty blanket about this, that all of us face change on a regular basis. And all of us this season are in a change. Least of, if nothing else, at least the fact that our church is going through a change with the worship dynamic. And that affects me because that's a friend of mine that I don't see on a daily basis. I've been putting my heart in a position that hopes the best for her, but I have had the unique privilege of getting to spend a lot of time with a friend of mine that is now going somewhere else. That's tough. That's change. It's hard to always see that as a good thing. But I believe that God has more in store for both her and us. God is big. He's more than I can understand. So whatever is in your life, whatever the incomparable hurdle, whatever has been moved out of your cheese zone to see, Jesus is still the same. He's there to help you through and see you succeed. So we're going to take some time, and I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and bow your head. You don't have to come up or anything, but kind of putting yourself in a position, I'm going to pray, and we're just going to give him a quiet space. And whatever that change is in your life that you're actually not particularly looking forward to, whatever that change is that you are feeling that pang of fear involved in, this would be an awesome time to lay it down before the Lord. And just go, I want to be excited about this. I want to have a hope for this and not fear of this. Let's pray. Lord, my heart gets so confused sometimes. I'm sorry for where I've wanted to wear my old clothes far too quickly. And not seeing the new, fantastic things you're trying to give to me. Lord, I declare over us as a group that we want a move of you. We want your spirit. We want to do things differently. We want to see a change. And Lord, if we want to see a change amongst our communities, then we have to be up for even the littlest changes in our lives. If we want to change, if we want to see change in our friends' lives, to see them come to you, we need to be willing to follow you in the change that you're giving to us. Whether that be a new school, whether that be a new group, whether that just be a new year. Lord, would you just stir our hearts right now? Invade, reveal, search my heart and all of our hearts, Lord. Can you just stir in us where that is, where that fear, that unrepentant fear of change is? Can you just give us the strength to lay it down before you? And just, even if it's in our mind's eye, just actually imagine and handing you our fear and saying, I want to hope for the future. I want to hope for what you have for me. Can you just ignite that in us? Lord, just continue to open our hearts. Let us stir up. Let us just give to you all the places. I get a sense that there's actually probably more than one area. As soon as we start recognizing one, we actually go, oh, it's kind of connected to this too. Well, it's kind of connected to this too. Lord, would you just reveal to us in our hearts where we're afraid of this change, what we're afraid of karma. And just give us the strength to hand it to you and say, I don't want that fear. I want hope. Lord, we declare over us, we are entitled to hope. It's fruit from you. And we are entitled to it. I just get a sense that the Lord is releasing kind of hope and excitement. Just kind of felt it come up over my shoulder, over my head, kind of wave through. If that's something you need, try to position your heart, or maybe even your body, into a place where you can grab it. Just go, yes, God, I want that hope and excitement, and I need it. We're going to move into a time of worship. Actually, before that, we do that. We preface one statement, then we're going to take some questions if we haven't, and we're going to move to a time of worship. During our worship, if you have made in your heart a shift between fear and hope, preferably that way, put it out there. I think it would be a good idea to make some sort of prophetic declaration physically when you worship. Whether it's pushing it a little bit further than you normally do, whether it's stomping on fear, I don't know. It doesn't need to be overt to me. It doesn't need to be like, oh, look at that person, let's stomp on their fear. Yeah. It's not what it's about. But it's about owning it. Sometimes we let our hearts do some work, but we actually never get it shifted into the rest of us. I really feel the Lord saying, actually, we need to own this. We do need to own hope for the future, or else it'll be robbed. It's like seeds, unless you plant them deep, unless you let them go into the ground. Birds are just going to come around. Does that make sense? Cool. Any questions on change, cheese, mice, Christmas pajamas, anything?
Conflict
Yes. The good thing about if change is bad is it's change. So if a change can happen changing bad, it can easily happen changing good. Do you see what I mean? Like letting change, if you refuse to let any change happen, you'll always stay in the same place. But if you're open to change at all times, even if it changes to be bad, you're still open to all change. So when you're like, wow, this is nice. Oh, look, something nice. So yes, there's tons of times where change happens and it's like, this was a bad choice. I went with a different shampoo once. That was a bad choice. Nonetheless, little bad choice, but ultimately, so you stay open to change. Does that help? That's a great question. Sean?
Did you have to finish the example?
No, I think I don't know what this is weird, like I bought a whole bottle, so I should probably use the whole bottle. So I found that I was using a lot more every shower. Just a whole, yeah, just like, oh, missed my head, missed my head.
Yes, I mean, like hours. Oh, yeah.
Other questions?
I added water to the end of our last bit. I wasn't quite sure the shampoo we were using because I didn't want it to run out. But it turns out that new shampoo was maybe slightly better.
Oh, see? James! I hate buying these things. No joke. I literally have a cupboard full of deodorant, shaving cream, and toothpaste that I buy in the States. So I can just keep the same stuff I've always had. So I'm not like preaching as like I have this sorted. Yeah, I still have stuff to deal with too. Just prioritize. You know. Big stuff first. The other kids said. Any other questions? Cool. We're going to move into a time of worship, but here's what I don't want you to lose. That Spirit, the Holy Spirit that's still releasing the excitement and the hope, has not left. It's not like, oh, he's gone because we stopped praying. Maybe he'll come back. The Spirit is here and he's ministering to us even as we speak now. Don't lose touch with that while we worship. So as we worship, hold tight to the fact that the God who loves you so much and has promised never to change and always be there for you is a breath away as you worship. Okay?